James Steinhubel, TVU on the Faith Channel, and today we have Greg Hochhalter, Lead Pastor of the Sherwood Park Alliance Church. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing well, James. Thanks very much for the invitation.
Thanks for being here. So how are you guys doing? How are you handling COVID reality, your team-wise, and the church family?
I mean, that is a massive question, right? I think that's one of the 3 or 4 questions that have become almost cliche. How are you doing? What's for dinner? You know, there's just a few of those that are common questions. So it's a struggle to answer that well. My best answer for the church and faith community, I'll start there just in the broadest picture sense. I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing in our people and in terms of engagement. I think, interestingly, this unique season that we're in is actually causing a lot of our people in our faith community to say, wow, do I value now the church family? Do I value being part of something that is a connecting community? So again, I'm quite encouraged by a lot of things. That said, I mean, everything's different. Everything's changed. We're adjusting and pivoting and adapting and all of that. Most of that has happened already. Now we're kind of settling in for a little bit of a ride here. But honestly, I've been quite encouraged and grateful that at least the amount of sickness in Strathcona County and in Greater Edmonton and in our church community is minimal, and most people are just trying to ride out this crazy world.
You know, I'm looking at your website, and I just sort of quickly counted. It looks like you got a staff of about 30 people, around in there. So that, and you've got your large physical facility with a school. I can imagine you've got great meeting rooms and a great flow of work and how the ministry works. And so then, you know, so how are you doing that now? How are you keeping the life and the light inside the staff and the ministry team?
I appreciate your asking about our team. Before all this happened, we actually had, I think our head count was 51 people. So we actually have had a number of our staff who are on temporary layoff. Some of our staff team, their whole job is oriented around the facilitation of large group gatherings. That's the big bulk of their position, their job. And so without the ability to gather, there's not as much for some of these staff to do. Grateful for our supports that are in place. We've certainly tried to do our best to take care of our team that are on layoffs, and we've tried to do health checks and look after them and making sure they have the supports that are available to them. And most of them, I mean, overwhelmingly, they have been positive. Some of them even have written to me or called me and emailed me and said, you know, we get it, we understand. I'm sorry you had to do this. I mean, they've been amazing with their integrity and their character has been just remarkable. So the rest of the team, you know, we've got, that are doing online kind of stuff, producing all our online services on the weekends from our kids ministry, our youth ministry. Interestingly, our youth ministry, which is quite large and active, we've been doing decentralized gatherings for a few years now. Our high school youth actually meet in homes already, 7 or 8 homes in the county. And they use video curriculum that's professionally produced, really great stuff called Praxis. And so they actually have been able to almost keep their same levels of engagement because they were already in small groups, and now they do it all by Zoom and Zoom rooms. And they're able to have into triple digits of kids engaged, and parents are loving it because that's kind of all their kids have. Sometimes they can't go out and hang out with their friends like they might typically. So a lot of our ministry has been able to adapt quickly, and then other parts of it, it's like almost full stop. You can't hardly do anything like you used to do it. But again, our team's doing remarkably well, all things considered.
Now, I've got some questions that actually is really, some were about small groups and the off-site type organization. But just to get a context, share a little bit. How does a man of God, a spirit-filled, baptized believer in God, as we stand transparent before, our Heavenly Father.
I like where you're going, transported. You were saying as we stand transported. I was wondering where you were going with that.
Well, look at the times, right? So
yeah.
Transparent to be transported. But, so where do you come from? Like from the day you stepped into Bible college here, just quick, how did you get here?
Oh man. To a certain extent, ministry or pastoral ministry is kind of a big part of my family and my heritage. Before we started recording, James, you and I just talked a bit about our ancestry, and we both come from some German heritage. And I had a German Baptist father or a grandfather who pastored in Onaway in the 30s. Though we're from the States originally. My family, we're all from. My wife and I are both Americans originally. Very grateful to be in Canada, are proud citizens, especially these days, very proud to be a citizen of this country. But I got here originally in part because there was a Bible school on the south side of Edmonton, North American Baptist College, became Taylor College and Seminary. I went there for 2 years out of high school. And that's kind of where, if I can use this term, God kind of got a hold of me during my first couple of years of college spent in Edmonton. And I've been on a kind of a pastoral ministry trajectory ever since. So I started as a youth pastor at 21 years old in Southern California in Orange County. And we've been kind of working our way up the West Coast, it seems like going north. Next stop might be the Territories or something like that. But we've been in Edmonton now for 13 years, just coming up on 13 years, and had 6 years in Calgary and had 5 years in Kelowna as well. So we've had more of my adult life in Canada than in the States. But it's been sort of a route of a few different church stops along the way. But we've been in this community now for the longest run. Our kids grew up, graduated from high school here. So Edmonton is home. Edmonton has very much become home for us.
And in terms of the faith community, the church ministry, I guess overall that you lead, it's a significant faith community. It's how many thousand people come to church?
Well, I mean, there's a number of different ways to measure metrics, some pastors or churches will talk about attendance, and in a normal times, we would see weekend service attendance in that 1,800 to 2,000 range. We've got in our database thousands. We're a unique church in that there's a lot of people in our community that we're their church when they need a church or want a church. So we've got a couple of thousand people who are really kind of, and there's some data that would evidence that they're kind of all in, and there's thousands more that are loosely connected. And then when you have the addition of a school community, Strathcona Christian Academy is part of Elk Island Public Schools. So you have a whole other group of stakeholders there. So there's a lot of kind of coming and going from all of those folks. So we're not normal in a sense, but we're no better, or churches all have their advantages. They have their unique footprint in the community, and we have a little bit of a unique one in this community for sure. But very, I feel like I'm a very, very fortunate person to be both part of and be in leadership in a church like this one.
Oh, for sure, and the great work that's being done, and I wanted to create that context because that size of a community and receiving teaching and to be involved with the ministries that keep that church vital. Many of the people that we see every day around go to Sherwood Park Alliance. We don't know that, but they're the people that are part of the people that are bringing brightness and hope and community spirit into the community. Yeah. So thank you. But that
absolutely,
yeah. So with that kind of, it's easy to go by any kind of church and see it for its institutional presence, right? Its buildings and everything like that. But so that being said, the influence of your faith community is evident and obvious, so, and
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And many important people, members of parliament, past members of parliament, industrialists, business people, people involved in music and the community, all thrive in your spiritual community. So it's weaved into Sherwood Park and Strathcona in a very powerful
so I sometimes say it like this: if we get it right, and every once in a while we do a little bit, but when and if we get it right on occasion, we actually really can make a tangible difference in this community. One of the things that, if I can just talk about something I'm quite proud of, if I can use that term even, but a couple of years ago, with our county officials and leaders, we began to identify a gap in even some of our ability to provide shelter and intermediate steps for especially women caught up in domestic violence and when they need to flee. And so we had some measures in place that would provide some short-term relief. And so, but that wasn't enough, because when you only have like 21 days to get your affairs in order and you have to flee an abusive environment, that doesn't provide, it provides some immediate safety, but it necessarily doesn't solve the problem, especially if there's children involved in schools and workplace issues and even legal considerations and police investigations and all of that. And so with our church, Heartland Alliance, our daughter church, and a couple other local churches, we came together with the county and created this mechanism actually called Bridging the Gap. And now we have pieces in place to allow those individuals in those kind of situations a full year of respite. And the county is a partner in that. Other churches are a part of that. Several of our churches in the community, we all used our Christmas Eve offerings to fund some of those initiatives this last year. That's the kind of stuff that I get fired up about, where we can actually make a really tangible, profound difference in our community beyond just being a worshiping community, but we can actually get some really good things done too.
And that's that's so important and so good. And I was aware of the program, and so that's good that you brought it up. So now with the small groups, I just have to get.
Yeah.
I could talk really succinctly, but I have to move quickly now. So
let her fly.
Small groups.
Yeah.
Almost. Well, not for me. It's totally prophetic, right? And the power of what you guys laid in line. 7 years before you needed it? It seems to be an interesting correlation there.
Yeah.
Now, as you saw those groups engage, did they switch a bit and not just be teaching mechanisms, but where spiritual authority and the grace and love of God could reach into the community?
Let me answer that question in a slightly roundabout way, because I actually want to acknowledge the fact that, you put the context around small groups a little bit. And for those who might be uninformed, churches will use terms like small groups, life groups, different kind of groups. And what that basically means is maybe the best expression of a church in modern day isn't necessarily the big gathering with a bunch of people facing forward, sometimes observing, individuals leading, singing, preaching, teaching. All of that stuff's, I think, valuable and good. But if that's your only experience of church, I think you're missing out, because I think church in its essence, and you see this in the New Testament scriptures, is small groups of people gathering together. If I could preach for a second, I would go to a text like Acts chapter 2, and you see the people gathering together regularly, breaking bread with each other, caring for each other, supporting each other, doing life together in smaller communities. What we do on the weekends is not necessarily, I sometimes say this a little cheeky, but maybe isn't necessarily what Jesus had in mind. So I think what the essence of the New Testament church really is a small cell of people who do life together. That's not our best thing. This is the part I want to be honest about. We've got a number of those kind of cells and groups that exist within our community, within our church community, for sure. Hundreds of them, maybe dozens and dozens of them. Mm-hmm. But I actually feel like if I can very carefully use the term opportunity in this very bad thing that's happening to us, this is forcing us to deal with our addiction to big event type gathering. And I use with our leadership team, a bunch of our department leaders, we were at a retreat in January, and I could take you to the spot I was standing before dinner one night, and we were talking about this next year. We were starting our planning, and I got on a little bit of a soapbox, and it was good natured, but I did a bit of a rant about we are addicted to gathering. As pastors at Sherwood Park Alliance, whenever we want to do something, it seems like our instinct is to have another big event and call the community back to the building for another big thing. And I even said the words, what's it going to take to get us off of this addictive cycle of being so event driven? Mm-hmm. How about a pandemic? Mm. And now we can't do that. And this is actually forcing us. I think what's happening to us, and I think this is going to be true of all kinds of churches, most churches, this is not, how did I hear it today? This is not a interruption, this is a disruption. Mm. And if you think of it as just an interruption, that means we all go back to doing what we did before March. I think this is a disruption. And I think for our church, this is going to force us, help us. I think it's going to provide an incredible impetus to actually really practice what we believe in at our core. That is, the church in its essence is a smaller gathering than the big guy. I think that has a place, and there's something about the big gathering. We do that. There's something celebrational, motivational about that. But at its core, I think we're going to rediscover for ourselves, I think, in our church, at least, the value of small groups and small gatherings. That's going to elevate in its importance. And so I think we're moving in that direction. We're preparing for next year with that mindset for sure. Like, we're going to get off some of this treadmill that we've been on for a while.
That's so good. Now, if we can be brief, if we can't and it goes, I'm with you. So,
is that your way of saying be more brief?
No.
Okay.
I just know the question that I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
It can. Well, you know what? Just let's see what the
okay.
Lord deals with you on this question. Coming up to COVID, you've got a teaching message on the go. COVID hits. Was there disruption? Did the Lord bring a new line of teaching? Where are you at?
Wow, that's a great question. We actually stuck with our plan for the first 2 or 3 weeks. I've actually journaled. I've typed out those dates. My wife and I were in California with our kids from Montreal. We flew home March 10th, and March 11th, March 12th, 13th, for all those next few days is where everything just changed so fast. And so again, we flew home through largely empty airports early morning, March 10th. And by Friday night, the 13th of March, that was the last night I ate in a restaurant. I remember that. And then on the morning of March 13th, we made the decision to go online only. At that point, we still had the option by our health directives, but we just thought it was in poor form to try to meet in public. So we immediately shifted online. We just happened to be, with regard to our teaching content, in a series that was building toward Easter. And it was a lot of Old Testament stories where you see kind of the pointers to the coming Christ, where, so we stuck with that and then we changed a little bit on Easter. And then since Easter, we've completely chucked all of our previous plans and completely gone in a different direction. And the series of what we've been doing, because in a way we don't call what we do on the weekends a show, but we are doing a purely online experience. And so one of the things that we've learned pretty quickly that works really well for weekend services is story and interview. And so we've been doing this, what you and I are doing. We've been doing this in every weekend service where we have somebody, and the great thing is they can be from anywhere. We've had a couple people from California on, some of our own congregation. This weekend, I'm interviewing a mom who has biological kids and a pack of foster kids. And so we're going to talk about, I just wanted to have a unique mom on with me. And so then we'll go into a bit of a teaching on motherhood and parenting and that sort of thing. So we're using a lot more story, a lot of more inviting different people from our congregation to submit things by video and all of that. And now we're starting to plan for the summer, because it looks like we're going to be in this mode for a while. But right now, since Easter, up till now, we're in a unique thing, which we're just trying to tell good stories and then go to the scriptures for encouragement and hope and all of that.
That's awesome. How do people connect with that? How do they watch?
Well, the evidence, the metrics, the analytics are really quite encouraging. We're kind of almost staggered by it. And a lot of churches have seen this, that the engagement on the online platforms is really significant. We're actually streaming on 3 platforms currently, about to be 4. So our own website, and then we also stream our services on Facebook Live as well as YouTube. And by probably next week, I think we'll be on Apple TV as well. Mm-hmm. So even for me, like our services are done, we're not doing them live in real time. Mm-hmm. It's kind of simulated live. It has the feel of we're doing it all live, but we're doing it during the middle of the week. We're kind of building the thing up, and then we stream it during our normal times. First couple of weeks, we actually were live, and then we've moved to it just eliminates a lot of technical challenges if we have it done in advance. So I'm able to, I'm Monday to Friday now. Like I have this weird experience of Sunday mornings with my wife and making eggs. Like, this is what people do. I don't know what this is like. I've been a pastor for 30 plus years, and now I'm like at home and making eggs on Sunday morning. Is really, really weird. But the engagement levels are really, really strong. And so we kind of track the number of engagements. Like, we can tell how many people are clicked on or have watched part, at least. And if you imagine that in most places, there's 1.5. We just assume that in a lot of homes there's 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes families or sometimes individuals. But you can kind of extrapolate that out and kind of say, you know what, we probably are seeing similar engagement now than we did before all this happened. And the other thing I'm very much predicting, and I'm not the only one saying this, is once we do start to normalize things a little bit, and we'll raise the limits on gathering restrictions. That will come eventually, but it's not likely to be, from where we are now to all normal. It's likely to be a stage, just like our province rolled out last week. It's going to be a staged re-entry or reloading or relaunching, that sort of thing. I think there's going to be perhaps some resistance to large group gatherings for a while, even among people who are healthy, but hey, I don't need to necessarily take this risk. So I think some of what we're experiencing right now is here to stay. In the sense of, I think the future, even into the next few years, I think we're going to have a hybrid of in the room experience coupled with a large presence on the streaming side of it. And that's how we're preparing. We're heading into, we just had a meeting a couple hours ago talking about how we will do church in September, potentially with some people in the room, but maybe even more still on the online stream, and how that will change how we do things. I think this is our new reality.
So many things to talk about, the ability that people just all of a sudden have to work cameras and editing equipment, and the expansion of the ministry that we could talk for hours. Greg Hochhalter, lead pastor, Sherwood Park Alliance Church, with me, James Steinhubel, on the Faith Channel. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, James. Appreciate it.
We'll see you next time.
Okay.